Hi all, myself Ashwati MS. Things Fall Apart is a debut novel by Chinua Achebe, published in 1958. Things Fall Apart is considered a modern African novel. Things Fall Apart is written in English, which means that in addition to being a popular book in African schools, the novel has been widely read and taught outside of Africa too. Although it was only published about 60 years ago, the novel takes place in the 1890s. Things Fall Apart deals heavily with the effect of colonialism on the native people of Africa, in addition to examining the traditional culture of the Nigerian villagers in the novel. The novel follows the life of Okonkwo, an Igbo man and a local wrestling champion in the fictional Nigerian clan of Umofia. The work is split into three parts, with the first describing his family, personal life, and the customs and society of the Igbo, and the second and third section introducing the influence of European colonialism and Christian missionaries on Okonkwo, his family, and the wider Igbo community. Things Fall Apart takes place sometimes in the final decade of the 19th century in Igbo land, which occupies the southeastern portion of what is now known as Nigeria. Most of the action unfolds prior to the arrival of European missionaries. Accordingly, the geography of the novel is dictated by pre-colonial norms of political and social organization. An Igbo land, a cluster of 9 villages band together to protect each other and guarantee their own safety. The action of Things Fall Apart centers on the fictional village of Umofia, which is part of a larger political entity made up by the so-called 9 villages. In Igbo land, geography takes place at gender aspects depending on where a person's parents were born. For instance, Umofia is Okonkwo's father's homeland, which make it Okonkwo's fatherland. When Okonkwo get exiled for the crime of man's laughter, he and his family travels to another of the 9 villages, Mabanta, which is Okonkwo's motherland, that is, the village where his mother was born. The gendering of geography plays an important symbolic role in the novel, since Okonkwo sees his 7 years exile in the motherland as an emasculating threat to his reputation. Just as geography has meaning in Things Fall Apart, so too does time. The novel is set in the 1890s at the beginning of the British colonial incursion into Igbo land. The story takes place in a moment of rupture as the old way of pre-colonial period comes under threat from and eventually buckle under the weight of pressure from Europeans. The novel dramatizes the very beginning of British imperialism in the region, which started not with guns but with Bibles. As Achebe depicts in the book, it was missionaries who arrived first, paving the way for the civil servants who would eventually wrest political control at the point of a pen or if needed be a gun. Although Achebe shows very little direct violence being perpetrated against the Igbo people, he implies the violence to comes at the novel's end, when the district commissioner contemplates his books in progress, titled The Pacification of the Tribes of the Lower Niger. As any reader with a knowledge of Nigerian history will follow, this pacification would be achieved with a great deal of bloodshed and heartache.
Hi, I am Archana. I am dealing with the topic Chapter 1 to 8. Okonkwo is a wealthy and respected warrior of the Umuofia clan, a lower Nigerian tribe that is a part of consortium of 9 collected villages. He is haunted by the actions of Unoka, his cowardly and spendthrift father who died in disrepute, leaving many villages left unsettled. In response, Okonkwo became a clansman, warrior, farmer, and family provider extraordinaire. He has 12-year-old son named Noe, whom he finds lazy. Okongo worries that Noe will end up a failure like Unoka. In a settlement with the neighboring tribe, Umuofia wins a virgin and a 15-year-old boy. Okongo takes charge of the boy Ikemefuna and finds an ideal son in him. Noe likewise forms a strong attachment to the newcomer despite his fondness for Ikemefuna and despite the fact that the boy begins to call him father. Okongo does not let himself show any affection for him. During the week of peace, Okongo accuses his youngest wife Ojiogo of negligence. He severely beats her, breaking the peace of the sacred week. He makes some sacrifices to show his repentance, but he has shocked his community irreparably. Ikemefuna stays with Okongo's family for 3 years. Noe looks up to him as an elder brother and, much to Okongo's pleasure, develops a more masculine attitude. One day the locust comes to Umuofia. They will come every year for 7 years before disappearing for another generation. The village excitedly collects them because they are good to eat when cooked. Ogbufi Izudu, a respected village elder, informs Okongo in private that the oracle has said that Ikemefuna must be killed. He tells Okongo that because Ikemefuna calls him father, Okongo should not take part in the boy's death. Okongo lies to Ikemefuna, telling him that they must return him to his home village. Noe bursts into tears. As he walks with the men of Umuofia, Ikemefuna thinks about seeing his mother. After several years of walking, some of Okongo's clansmen attack the boy with machetes. Ikemefuna runs to Okongo for help, but Okongo, who doesn't wish to look weak in front of his fellow tribesmen, cut the boy down despite the oracle's admonishment. When Okongo returns home, Noe deduces that his friend is dead. Chapter 9 to 12. Okongo sinks into a depression, neither able to sleep or eat. He visits his friend Oberika and begins to feel revived a bit. Okongo's daughter Enzima falls ill, but she recovers after Okongo gathers leaves for her medicine. The death of Ogbufi Ezidu is announced to the surrounding villages by means of the ekwe, a musical instrument. Okongo feels guilty because the last time Ezidu visited him was to warn him against taking part in Ikemefuna's death. At Ogbufi Ezidu's large and elaborate funeral, the men beat drums and fire their guns. Tragedy compounds upon itself when Okongo's guns explodes and kills Ogbufi Ezidu's 16-year-old son.
Hi friends, I am dealing with the chapter 13. Umuofia awakes to the news that Isildu has died. Okongo's gun explodes and the sharpener kills Isildu's 16-year-old son. Okongo must flee, but since the killing was accidental, he will be allowed to return to the clan after 7 years. In chapter 14, in his motherland, Okongo is welcomed by Ujendu, his maternal uncle. Ujendu talks about his personal loss and he advises him to accept his exile. In chapter 15, Obrika pays a visit to Manta. He tells the Apain clan has been wiped out. Okongo and Obrika have a genuine friendship. In chapter 16, Obrika returns to Manda after 2 years. He informs about the arrival of missionaries and he also reports that Noe is fascinated by Christianity. In chapter 17, the missionaries built a church and it soon wins 3 converts. Noe leaves his father's compound and travels to a school. In chapter 18, the outcasts soon become the most zealous members of the church. The elders and rulers decide to ostracize them. The man who boasted of killing the snake has died. The villagers' trust in their gods is thereby reaffirmed. In chapter 19, Okongo's 7 years of exile are drawing to an end. He provides a large feast. He also expresses that Christianity is making people away from their families and traditions. In chapter 20, Umuofia is much changed after 7 years. The church has grown in strength. The white men subject the villagers to their judicial system. In chapter 21, Mr. Brown builds a school. He tells Okongo that Noe is in a training college for teachers. In chapter 22, Reverend James Smith, a strict and intolerant man, replaces Mr. Brown. The villagers destroy the church. In chapter 23, the clansmen are given a lecture about the ill treatment of people. A fine is set. The Umofia gather and decide to pay the fine. Okongo and others set free. The meeting interrupted by court messengers. Okongo then realizes that there will be no war. It includes in chapter 24. In the next chapter, the last chapter, chapter 25, the district commissioner descends on Okongo's compound with a group of soldiers. Okongo was not there. Oblika leads them to the place where Okongo has hanged himself. At the novel ends, the district commissioner decides to write a book about his experiences. He plans to call the book The Pacification of the Primitive Tribes of the Lower Niger. This is all about the summary. Thank you.
Hi all, myself Sri Lakshmi and I am dealing with characters in the novel Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. Okonko is the central character of the novel Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. A young leader of the African Igbo community of Umofia, he is known as a fierce warrior as well as a successful farmer. He is determined to overcome the stigma left by his father's laziness and wastefulness. The next character is Unoka, and he is Okonko's father, and he is known for his weakness and lack of responsibility. Novoe, Okonko's oldest son, he is a 12-year boy at the book's beginning. He is innately a sensitive young man. Iceman is a boy of 14 who is given to Umofia by a neighboring village to avoid war. He is a clever, resourceful young man. Egwefi is Okonko's second wife and she is the mother of her only living child, Ezinma. The next character is Ezinma and she is the only surviving child of Okonko and his second wife, Egwefi. Ojubo is Okonko's third wife and perhaps she is the mother of several of Okonko's children. Oberika is Okonko's best friend who often represents the voice of reason. He has two children, Maduka and Ekoke. Chielo, a village widow who is also the priestess of Agbala. Agbala is the oracle of the hills and the caves who influences all aspects of Umofian life. She is based on the real oracle at Auka who controlled Igbo life for centuries. Mr. Brown is the first white Christian missionary in Umofia and Mbanda. An understanding and accommodating man, he is inclined to listen to the Igbos. Mr. Kiaga is a native interpreter of the missionaries. He is a teacher and a leader of the new church in Mbanda. Reverend James Smith is a strict stereotypical white Christian missionary who takes over the church after Mr. Brown's departure. The district commissioner is a stern stereotypical white colonial administrator of Umofia. He follows the regulations to the letter and possesses little knowledge or understanding of the people for whom he tries to administer a new government. Ikamfuna comes to Umofia early in the book as settlement for a dispute with a nearby village. Not knowing what else to do with him, Okonko lets Ikamfuna live with his first wife. Ikamfuna quickly becomes a well-loved member of the family. He serves as a role model for Okonko's eldest son Novoe, and over time he also earns Okonko's respect. But more important than the role he plays in Okonko's family is the effect his death has on the unfolding events of the novel. When the village elders decide the time has come to kill Ikamfuna and finally settle the dispute with the neighboring village, Okonko insists on taking part in the execution despite the fact that the boy calls him father. Okonko ends up killing Ikamfuna himself out of fear that his failure to take responsibility would make him look weak. Ikamfuna's death irreversibly harms the relationship between Okonko and Novoe. His death is also a bad omen that has a symbolic connection to Okonko's later exile from Umuofia. In this sense, the death of Ikemefuna signals the start of things fall apart.
Hi all, myself Adira and I am dealing with themes, symbols, motif in the novel Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. The main themes of the novel are family, religion, tradition and culture, fear, language and communication, man and the natural world, sin, respect and reputation, gender. The main symbols in the novel are locust, fire, drum and yam. Motifs in the novel: child, animal imagery. First we move on to family. Family for the Igbo, there are few key ideas that forms the basis of an ideal family: mutual respect for each other, a reverence for all past fathers and unity. Then religion. The Igbo gods are mostly manifestations of nature and its element, which makes sense because they are agricultural society that depends on the regularity of season and natural phenomena to survive. Tradition. Chinua Achebe describes Igbo culture, which encompasses polytheistic religion, father-son inheritance, farming tradition, and beliefs in evil spirit. Fear. Many of the characters suffer from fear of some sort. Fear in the novel leads characters to behave in negative ways that can bring the wrath of God, guilt, and community disapproval upon them. Language and communication. Speech is highly stylized in Igbo culture, with specific rules on how to address a neighbor, a superior, an ancestor, a spirit, and a god. While dialogue is usually direct in its meaning, speakers often adorn conversations with proverbs or reference to folklores which play a profound role in shaping Igbo beliefs. Men and natural world. As an agricultural society, the survival of the Umuofian depends upon the earth and its predictable cycle of season. The Igbo also reap the earth, one with rather economical and effective ways. Sins. The things fall apart. Sins is defined as a crimes against the God. Trust. Such transgressions occurs when a member of society violates the most intimate bonds of family, especially with regards to one's children, or somehow insult an ancestral spirit. These sins call for quick and serve punishment, often including animal sacrifices, a heavy fine, various symbolic gestures of atonement, exile from one fatherland, or even death. Respect and reputation. Reputation is based on merit. Men gain reputation through bravery in battle, skill of wrestling, and hard work as seen through the size of the yam harvest. Gender. Traditional Igbo life presented in the novel revolves around structured gender roles. The dominant role of women is first to make pure bride or an honorable man, second to be a submissive wife, and third to bear many children. Ideas of balance between masculine and feminine forces, body and mind, or soul, emotionally and rationality, mother and father, if one is in imbalance, it makes the whole system haywire.